this episode of the Carolina Sports Guy, hey, I have no dog in this fight. I'm not a Gamecock. I'm not a Tiger. Yes, today on the Carolina Sports Guy, we're going to be talking about the rivalry between University of South Carolina Gamecocks, Clemson University Tigers. Okay, YouTube friends and family, please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost anything. Just go down there, do a brother a favor, and subscribe. It's free. Hit that like button so that, let me know you like the content so I can put more great content out like what's in today's video. Hit that bell notification so that you can be notified the next time I put a video out. It might be a video like this. It might be a little bit something talking about the Carolina Panthers or the Charlotte Hornets or the Carolina Hurricanes or other college sports around the Carolinas. And leave some comments. Let me know what you think about the video, what you didn't like, especially you people in South Carolina. I'm a North Carolina guy, so I'm stepping out on a ledge today talking about your beloved Gamecocks and Tigers and your rivalry because you live it. I'm looking on the outside, but I'm anxious to see what you guys think. And maybe, just maybe in time, I'll come back and I'll do another video on this rivalry as I collect more information and hear from some of you fans out there who are either one, a Gamecock fan or a Tiger fan. Alright folks, I started looking and thinking, I got a lot of history in North Carolina, where between the Duke and North Carolina rivalry, and I can even say NC State and East Carolina. Folks from NC State and MooU, we like to say, don't really consider it a rivalry. But we've had some pretty good football games over the years. Wake Forest and NC State, or Duke and North Carolina, like I said, or NC State and Carolina. Had a lot of good rivalries. And I'd like to think that Appalachian State and Coastal Carolina will develop some rivalries in the Sun Belt. So we're going to see what happens, but really want to concentrate on Clemson and South Carolina. I had a good friend that brought up years ago, because when I was young and curious, I was such a wee little lad when the South Carolina Gamecocks left the ACC. I believe it was 1971. They had a head coach, athletic director, Paul Diesel, wanted to pull them out. They weren't winning anything. The ACC, I believe, had 8 schools at the time. Weren't winning anything. And really, up until that point in time, I think they had won one ACC basketball championship. He thought if they pulled them out, become independent, they could be the southern example of Notre Dame. But anyway, looking at these two schools, South Carolina, the Gamecocks. School was formed in 1801. Clemson University of Tigers, closer to the western part of the state, kind of in the little mountainous range. The Tigers, school was formed in 1889. They're both public institutions. And they both were charter members of the ACC in 1953. As a matter of fact, these schools have been playing each other since 1896. And they were in the Southern Conference for a long time, and the reason why the Southern Conference didn't break up, but they lost like 7 of their members, which were the 7 founding ACC members of South Carolina and Clemson, North Carolina State, Duke, Wake Forest, and Maryland, which are like 6 months later Virginia joined to have the 8 schools. They left the Southern Conference because the Southern Conference was very unhappy that they did not want South Carolina and Clemson both teams accepting a bowl game or bowl invitation, and they both did, and the conference was going to ban Clemson from doing so, and state legislation in South Carolina got together and supported it, and they basically pulled out with these other North Carolina schools and Maryland, and that's how the Atlantic Coast Conference was formed, departing the Southern Conference and forming that in 1953. But these two schools are 132 miles apart. When they get together and play, they call it the Palmetto Bowl because South Carolina is known as a Palmetto State. If you look on their state flag, the blue flag with the white palmetto on it, tree, that's what we got there. Now, the University of South Carolina, a lot of people call it the low country, the back country. They believe in peaceful harmony. It's an urban school. It's a statewide school. Clemson had donors of money. They kind of wanted to look different. We're going back and looking at post-Civil War Reconstruction era. Clemson was kind of had people that wanted to do things different, agriculturally speaking, than what was going on at the University of South Carolina. State funds were all going to South Carolina. A gentleman by the last name of Clemson ended up donating some land and money, and eventually, in 1889, Clemson University is founded. Okay, Clemson's looked at it, a rural university, upstate. Now, kind of want to look at this. The main thing I wanted to focus on was the football rivalry. The first meeting took place on November the 12th of 1896. South Carolina won that 12-6. Now, they have met 117 times. I think they have met like second longest or something like that before the streak was broken because of COVID in 2020. But Clemson holds an all-time edge over South Carolina, 71 wins, 42 losses, and 4 ties. The longest win streak in this rivalry, Clemson's at a 7-game win streak. Their current streak right now is 6. So they play this year, if Clemson wins, they're going to tie that record. And the largest victory was by Clemson in 1900, 51-0. Now, interesting stat here that I did not know. 1896, which first year they played, to 1959. You're talking about 63 years. They only played this game in Columbia, which is what Bryce Memorial Stadium in South Carolina. They never played in Clemson. 1960 though, they switch it. They started alternating. Took them that long to switch this rivalry. My gosh, folks, 60-some years before you actually let a game go to Clemson. So it's alternated now. Now, Clemson has beaten South Carolina more than any other school they've ever played. Okay, they've actually beaten South Carolina more than anybody. Now, South Carolina is the second most over Clemson. The one team that's beat Clemson the most has been Georgia Tech, believe it or not. Now, looking at football, kind of rounding it up, you've got a lot of players who've come out of both schools. I mean, Jadeveon Clowney at South Carolina, George Rogers, South Carolina, Trevor Lawrence at Clemson, Deshaun Watson, Clemson, Dwight Clark at Clemson. Could go all kinds of defensive players on both sides of the ball for these teams. But 1981 hurt South Carolina Gamecock fans because that's the year that Clemson won the national championship against Nebraska in the Orange Bowl. South Carolina doesn't have that national championship in football. 2016, with Deshaun Watson, Clemson wins their second. 2018, Clemson wins the third, with Trevor Lawrence. And you can look, the coaching staff, they've had Danny Ford. Of course, they've had Dabo Swinney. South Carolina's had Lou Holtz. Had a couple other good coaches. They had Steve Spurrier for years, the old ball coach trying to turn that program around. All right, now, looking at some of these games, 2013 was the highest ranked game between these two schools. Clemson was ranked number 6. South Carolina was ranked number 10. There's a 2004 game, there was a brawl. I believe this was Lou Holtz was coaching South Carolina. Brawl on the field between the two schools. There is constant hate. So knowing North Carolina, I've known people in North Carolina, folks, Tar Heel fans. That I've got a sister-in-law who's got 2 children, and her oldest kid is by one man. Her husband is second gentleman, another kid by him. When the first father comes to pick up his daughter, he's a Duke fan. On game days, he's not allowed in that house to pick up his daughter. He has to be outside because he's wearing his Duke gear. And my brother-in-law is a Tar Heel fan. He will not let him in the house. It gets that nasty. And, I got a father who's an NC State fan. Of course, when ECU. So there's a lot of good rivalries in the Carolinas. And South Carolina Clemson is the rivalry in the state of South Carolina. And, with the only Coastal Carolina being the only other FBS school, and, they've got fans, they've got rivalry, but really, Clemson, South Carolina, it's like, I'm sure there's households down there where some Clemson fans or one husband or wife or kids or whatever, and, they don't want to marry a South Carolina fan or Clemson fan back and forth. I'm sure that does exist. Now, I want to look at 2 other sports, baseball. Now, hey, South Carolina, 2010, 2011, they got 2 national championships. Clemson does not have one. So they've got that bragging rights. However, Clemson leads the all-time series in baseball, 181 games to 143 with 2 ties. So South Carolina's got the bragging rights for the championships, but the overall series goes to Clemson. Finally, in basketball, these two schools have not really been that good in basketball. Like I said, South Carolina won the ACC the one time they were there, when Bobby Cremins, the head coach that coached at Georgia Tech and College of Charleston in the early 70s, I believe, won before they left the ACC, won one ACC championship. Clemson's won one, I believe, but it's been recent. But it's when the ACC North Carolina schools have been down and out. In fact, it was like 50-some years or whatever it was. Clemson never even beat North Carolina in Chapel Hill. But we look at basketball, South Carolina. Alex English is probably the biggest name that came out of the University of South Carolina, played many years in the NBA. Of course, Clemson's had people like Eldon Campbell, who had a little bit of an NBA career, and some other players. Those are probably the 2 biggest names. But basketball-wise, even though Clemson's ACC, and now that South Carolina's left the ACC, and now they're in the SEC, South Carolina, believe it or not, leads the all-time rivalry, 91-79 over Clemson. So that's just about kind of a brief look at the history and a little bit of the rivalry, just some of the debate about Clemson and South Carolina. Subscribe to this channel. Doesn't cost anything. Hit that like button. Let me know what you liked in the content today, what you'd like to see in further episodes. Give me a comment. Shout out. Tell me what I could have added to this comment, especially from the South Carolina or alma mater of the school. Let me know between South Carolina and Clemson what I could bring to the table better. Would you like to see another updated video of this? Hit that bell notification so you can be notified of more content like this as I'm putting more Charlotte Hornet, Carolina Panther, Carolina Hurricane, and other Carolina sports out. And we will see you the next time on another episode of Carolina Sports Guy.